All right, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us for Calculating Recruitment Marketing ROI. My name is Ian Alexander and I head up marketing for telemetry. And I'm joined by Stephen Schwander, who heads up our client solutions group. Stephen, good afternoon to you.
Hey, good afternoon. Good to be here today.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. We're going to talk about calculating recruitment marketing ROI. So it's going to be a little bit, which brain is it, left or right? It's going to be the logical side today. So there are going to be a lot of calculations that we're talking about. But I want to assure you that you don't have to get too caught up in the numbers today because we are going to send you within 24 hours a copy of the slides, a recorded version of the webinar, and you're also going to get our new ebook, which we're just releasing this week, called the Recruitment Marketing ROI Handbook. So you'll have a lot of resources that go deeper that you can refer back to beyond this particular session. So just a heads up on that. Also, while we're doing housekeeping, please ask questions as they come to you. We will most likely address those questions at the end, but if they are something that's appropriate to what we're talking about at that moment and it's not coming up or being answered later, we will throw it in there. So just to take a look at the agenda, we're going to do a little refresh on recruitment marketing so we can all level set on what it is that we're talking about. We're going to talk about the value of recruitment marketing and kind of what you may be able to expect from in terms of a value creation standpoint at a high level. We're going to talk about some key metrics for calculating recruitment marketing ROI, some that you know about, some that you may not have heard of. This will be your toolkit, essentially. And then we're going to do some examples of calculating ROI. We're going to focus those examples around candidate experience, around recruitment CRM and candidate engagement, around sort of candidate attraction, advertising, social networks, et cetera, and then overall recruitment marketing operations. And then we're going to end with a little word about ongoing measurement, because ongoing measurement is where you really prove the ROI that you set out to achieve when you're doing new recruitment marketing strategies and technologies. All right, and then of course Q&A at the end. So when we talk about recruitment marketing, I always like to start with this slide. It kind of just puts it into perspective where it sits within the overall human resources sort of capability stack. So when you look at the bottom there, the foundation is human resources. That can be broken down into sort of talent acquisition and talent management. Of course, on the talent management side, it's going to be, among other things, things like e-learning, compensation, performance management. And then on the talent acquisition side, it's going to be more ATS-based processes like recruiting and onboarding. And in front of the ATS and those recruiting capabilities is really where recruitment marketing sits. And it's all the pre-applicant programs, initiatives, strategies, and technologies that you use to go out and get more candidates to apply for your jobs. All right. So to break that down pretty granularly, we look at recruitment marketing as starting with influence, and that's all the things that you do to define your employer brand, your unique employer value proposition, your messaging strategies, all those things that you do to really communicate the value of your organization to candidates. Inbound attraction, right? So that's you getting jobs out in front of people and attracting them back to your company, your career site, your jobs to apply. That's everything from job advertising on job boards to social network distribution and the like. Then outbound sourcing. This is kind of the sales side of recruitment marketing, and that's where you're going out and looking for specific talent and inviting them to apply for open positions. Right? So this is outbound versus the inbound. Engagement and nurturing. So as you're inbound attracting large numbers of candidates and you're outbound sourcing large numbers of candidates, if you centralize that database of potential candidates, you have an opportunity to communicate with them, to keep them warm, nurture them over the long term. So that would be engagement and nurturing. Then we get to conversion and candidate experience, right? So that's turning people with an interest in your organization into active applicants, right? And that's through everything from career sites to email campaigns to online applications, talent networks, etc. Not finally, but next you get into the qualification side of things. So that's interviewing, scheduling, evaluating candidates and selecting, right? Then you move into retention. Recruitment marketing doesn't stop once someone's been hired. You need to maintain employees as engaged brand ambassadors for your organization so they can generate additional referrals for future positions and really prove or disprove sort of your employer value proposition. And then finally, all those things that you're doing are giving you data that you can analyze. And in the recruitment marketing process, data is very important because it helps you understand what you're doing, what's successful, what's less successful, so you can do more of what's working in terms of generating new candidates and hires and less of what's not. All right, so now that I've exploded out into the sort of those larger buckets or those more numerous buckets, I'm going to bring it back down into sort of 4, arguably 5 core buckets for recruitment marketing ROI. And the first one is a big one, candidate attraction. As recruiters, we're very addicted to candidate attraction, throw our jobs out there and work with the people that come back. It's still a key part of recruitment marketing, but really everything is migrating more towards an outbound strategy, and that's where talent sourcing and candidate relationship management come in. So that is the process of centralizing all your candidates into a centralized CRM talent pool, and then sourcing from that talent pool over the long term from a more engagement-based, relationship-based process, rather than constantly going out and just trying to re-attract candidates every time a new job comes out. Next, candidate experience. Again, that's the conversion side of things. That's career sites. It's everything you do to turn a potentially interested candidate into an engaged applicant. And then operations. That's the analytics. That's the metrics. That's the refinement. That's the optimization of your overall recruiting processes. So that's where we're going to look for ROI, or in those 4 buckets. Now, the key thing when you're looking to establish an ROI, if you're going to put time, effort, money, energy into strategies or technologies that are going to increase your capabilities with regard to recruitment marketing, you really need to tie your ROI back to specific things that you're doing, right? And so in order to do this, I'm kind of giving you a framework here, so bear with me. We worked with an organization called Brandon Hall Group, which is a research company that covers human resources and recruiting and learning management, et cetera. And they did a survey of hundreds of organizations to really gauge kind of where people fall within their capabilities regarding recruitment marketing. And this is a lot going on here, so we don't have to go too deep into this right now, but you can see there's a level 1 all the way up through level 4, and we're going from little to no capabilities all the way to fully optimized capabilities. And this is important to keep in mind, and a good reference for you as you're looking at ROI of the things that you're doing, because it's based in actual capabilities, right? And obviously you've got more value coming back to you the higher up you go up this model. So to look at the individual stages, you start with kind of level 1, and this is good because you can kind of map yourself, your organization to this model, see where you fall, see how far you have to go, and it'll help when you're projecting projected efficiencies into a particular capability that you're trying to analyze ROI on. You can be more aggressive if you've got farther to go. You can be less aggressive if you have less far to go in terms of optimizing your capabilities. But as you look at level 1, it's pretty much not much going on, right? So you have no talent acquisition strategy. You've got no recruitment marketing strategies or practices. You might be measuring things like time to hire or cost per hire. Staff is really not dedicated towards recruiting, very reactive, and you really have no recruitment marketing technology to speak of. When you move to level 2, now we start to see companies, and this is, you can see at the top, about 10% of the companies that were surveyed fell within level 1. In level 2, this is the largest chunk, and about 41% of companies fell in here. And that is, you have some talent acquisition strategy formalized, you're developing it, it's building out, it's growing. From a recruitment marketing standpoint, you have some practices in place. Maybe you post some jobs. Maybe you do some low-level recruitment marketing practices. In terms of metrics, now you're getting a little bit more sophisticated. Maybe looking at things like quality of hire metrics in terms of evaluating your recruiting effectiveness. From a staff standpoint, you've got some recruiters that are dedicated to recruiting, maybe filling sort of lower level positions, maybe outsourcing some of the higher level positions. And from a technology standpoint, you're likely to have an applicant tracking system. And we move to level 3. We've got, from a talent acquisition standpoint, you've got a fully formulated talent acquisition strategies. From a recruitment marketing standpoint, you've got high-level recruitment marketing strategies, practices, messaging. You've done your work around your brand. You're channeling that brand messaging and look and feel through most of what you're doing online and communications, et cetera. From a metric standpoint, you're really starting to look at what channels to candidates are most effective for us and which ones aren't, and trying to optimize from that standpoint. From a staffing position, your recruiters can fill most positions. You've got a robust, focused recruiting staff. From a technology standpoint, you've got things like search engine optimized career sites and job pages. You're likely to have a candidate relationship management system. You certainly have an applicant tracking system. You have some system for dealing with employee referrals. You're distributing jobs. You've got a pretty well realized toolkit of recruitment marketing technologies that's helping you drive candidates to your organization. And then level 4, which is fully optimized, and again, we're at 10% here in terms of the number of companies that fall within this. Now you have fully integrated talent acquisition strategies that are aligned with your organizational goals. So you're looking forward, are we able to meet demand this year, next year, et cetera, in terms of how we're getting candidates and how we're acquiring employees. From a recruitment marketing standpoint, you've got fully developed recruitment marketing strategies and practices that are supporting that talent acquisition strategy. From a metric standpoint, as I said, you're looking forward, you're using predictive analytics, looking at future trend analysis to really see how your staffing plan can then support your overall organizational objectives. You have extensive specialized recruiting staff. And from a technology standpoint, you have fully integrated recruitment marketing platforms, right? So now those disparate tools that you might be using on a one-off basis are now integrated in a platform that work together, each to help the other be more effective, and you have more sort of analytics that are from source to hire. Okay. So as we move forward, now we've sort of mapped out here what are all the capabilities and where do you fall. The sort of the punchline here is that when Brandon Hall did this study, they compared the people at the top half of recruitment marketing capability to the people at the bottom half of recruitment marketing capabilities, and they came up with some pretty compelling value points, right? So the first one is organizations in the top half had 31% higher quality of hire, right? And they had 39% better time to hire. They had 25% better new hire retention and 32% new hire engagement. And finally, they saw similar increases in customer retention, right? So they even mapped it back to how do these recruiting practices affect the overall success of the business. Those are pretty compelling numbers and sort of form the broad areas that you can look to benchmark when you're looking at the kind of new value you can create with recruitment marketing strategies and technology. So with that, Stephen's going to kind of talk a little bit about some of the areas that you can, or some of the metrics that you can use to calculate this ROI.
Great. So Ian, I'm already sold on the value of recruitment marketing, so I appreciate that. Another thing I appreciate about what I'm hearing so far is this. I mean, I look at the long list of people who are on this webinar, and I realize that there are people on this webinar that are far smarter than I am. You said at the top of the story that this was a left brain exercise in terms of looking at ROI, and I thought, well, I probably bring a right brain approach to this because at my gut, this is about really understanding how I, as an individual recruiter, sourcer, or how my team ultimately adds value to the organization, right? So there's a lot of sort of emotion behind this for me as I look at how how people jump into this. Another thing I noticed, Ian, is that when you look at the capability matrix rather, it's okay not to be a number 4, right? I mean, when we start taking a look at starting down the road, understanding where we're at is half of the battle. And then when we understand where we're at, we can start saying, well, based on where I'm at, what types of metrics can I gather to do a number of things? Number one, to provide a business case for doing more, perhaps buying solutions or increasing my headcount or changing a strategy. And then number two, for really recognizing whether or not my change in strategy is actually driving some change. So we're going to quickly walk through a number of key metrics. We won't focus on each individual one because you will have an opportunity to review this later on your own. But I do want to say that it's important for you as an organization to define these for yourselves, and these are really good starting points. If you're defining them in a way that you want to do better next year than you did this year, then you have to have that same definition from year over year over year. If you're trying to define it to compare yourself, say, to an industry standard, then you want to be using industry standard definitions for some of these. So the first one we're going to jump into is what we call a cost per visit. I mean, we need to drive people to our career website. And as Ian said, even though we're seeing more and more focus on outbound recruitment, marketing, and sourcing, the call to action is typically coming back to your front door or one of the side doors, if you will, which is your career site and your microsite. So how much is it costing you to actually bring people there so that you can begin that engagement? So a good metric here is by simply dividing your recruiting budget. Now, you define what that recruiting budget is. Does it include your people? Does it not? But the reality is everything you do is designed to bring people into either that front door or a side door to begin that engagement. So you take your recruiting budget and just divide it by the number of visitors to your site each year, and you're going to be able to arrive at that number. You can get a little bit more complex with that and start, taking a look at, what it costs to drive them to, a specific landing page or your front page, etc. But this is a key metric to begin tracking. The next one is the cost per candidate, right? What does it cost to actually then bring somebody in, and not just as a visitor, but convert them into that candidate? So it takes your candidate acquisition budget, right, all the money you're spending to acquire candidates, and divides it by the number of candidates, right? Both applicants and non-applicants, by the way, right? Because applicants are going to go all the way through, so they will have been candidates at one point, and you just divide that number, right? And you come up with your cost per candidate. It's almost if you all watch Shark Tank, it's like when they ask entrepreneurs who are selling online, what's your cost per acquisition, right? This is a really key metric in marketing in general, and so we need to see it from a recruitment marketing perspective. Cost per applicant, then, just going down that road just a little bit, measures how efficiently you're attracting available candidates and then converting them all the way to applicants. So you'd be able to see that as well. We continue now with the cost per hire. This is one that we're all familiar with, and we've been tracking for a very long time. Those of us who have been in the industry for a while, it's a keystone metric. Basically, it measures the efficiency of everything we do in the recruitment realm, right? From candidate acquisition right through to recruitment operations on a per hire basis. So taking all of that, and that's why you might want to define, the cost in some of the earlier metrics differently. And again, the key here is not as much about how you measure it, but that you measure it the same way year on year. Or again, if you're trying to benchmark against industry averages, that you really understand, what are the costs? Is it all in costs? Is it all in minus people costs, etc. Right? Cost per quality of hire, a lot more tricky, right? Again, we get to the point where how do we measure quality per hire, and that's really an internal issue, and it's a technical issue. What internally for you as an organization determines that somebody was a quality hire? Is it that they made it past their 1-year anniversary, particularly in organizations with a lot of turnover? That might be it. Are you able to capture manager satisfaction at month 3, at month 6, and are you capturing that? And if so, where are you capturing that? But no matter how you measure the quality per the cost per quality then would be calculated by basically just taking that overall recruiting budget that you defined earlier, divide that by your total number of hires, but this time you want to take out the people who don't meet that threshold, right? Who either haven't hit a satisfaction number, who haven't hit a production number, or haven't made it to year 1 or month 6, right? Time to fill, again, we all know this, and it's extremely important to understand how we measure time to fill, number 1. Number 2, that when we measure time to fill, we're measuring that to a point where we actually have control over it, right? And we're not making any comments here now about hiring managers, right? But we want to be able to measure time to fill in those areas that we have control over. I would add to time to fill that a really useful metric might be time to find, right? So that point in time where you measure from the time the job was posted to the time that the person who ultimately was hired was actually found in the system, right? And it's kind of interesting because depending upon how you measure that number could be 0. We've got clients for whom in 2016, 35% of all of their hires were from people who were already in the system, right? Meaning they ran a quick search, they sent a quick marketing message out, people responded and applied to that job, right? So time to fill, time to find. New hire retention rates, right? You just divide your hires by your retained hires, whatever that number is, right? Everybody here's over a year, for instance, by your total number of hires, you get a percentage there. Revenue per employee, this is important. A lot of us in the HR realm may not know what that is, but guaranteed somebody in the finance department is actually measuring this, or they wouldn't be able to do accurate forecasting, right? So if we can capture what that number is, what is the daily revenue per employee or the yearly, and divide that by day, it's going to help us when we're analyzing things like lowering the time to fill, for instance, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Visitor to applicant rate, right? Number of people that actually hit our career site versus the number of people who are actually then taking the next step to apply, right? You might even want to go from things like the number of visitors, the number of looks to my job, and then the number of people who click the apply. And if you actually have the capability to measure it, how about then measuring the actual conversion rate at the end to see if you have any problems with your application process itself, right? And that brings me to the next one, which is just basically your application completion rate, right? And if you have a really nicely integrated CRM tool, then you're able to see this on a step-by-step basis with the data that's being entered into your ATS as well.
All right, so thanks, Stephen. So that's basically your toolkit, as I said before. These are the metrics that you're going to see here as we start to look at some examples. All right, so the first example I'm going to talk about is candidate experience ROI. And when we look at candidate experience, really conversion is the key, as Stephen was just talking about, those visitor to applicant rates, application conversion rates, or start applications to complete application rates. This is where you can see the largest return on investment for the efforts that you do. So if you've gone through and optimized your entire candidate experience, it's going to look something like this, right? You're going to have a well-conceived and executed employer brand that spiders through everything you do around converting candidates on your career site, from job pages and communications that you send to candidates as they move through your process. Well-executed employer brand. It's going to be delivered via mobile optimized career sites and targeted subpages within those career sites. You've personalized your messaging based on candidate personas or key job families. So you've gone beyond sort of having a one-size-fits-all career site. You've really targeted specific strategic job families, so that if I come into your organization and I work in technology, I have a subpage that I'm directed to that has all the jobs that I would be interested in, all the segmented messaging for our technologists, for our organization that we want them to know, case studies, etc. We're targeting with our career site. We're more sophisticated. Um, Providing consumer quality job search tools, right? So it's very easy for someone to come in on a mobile device or on a desktop and get right to the kinds of jobs that they're looking for. We're offering talent networks and job alerts so that more passive candidates or casual candidates or maybe aren't ready to apply still have a way to engage with us, give us their qualifications and their resumes, and allow us to source later on from them. And then delivering fast, painless, and mobile optimized applications and application processes, right? So this is where you should be, and there's a lot of sub bullets, within this. There's a lot of complexity here, but at the high level, these are the bases that we recommend that you touch, because these are the ones that are going to affect your ability to convert more visitors to applicants. Excuse me. So the reason I say that is because as you're doing these calculations or these projections for ROI, you're going to have to put a stake in the ground in terms of what's my expected gain here, and those are predictions. And you need to wrap those predictions around specific capabilities, and you also need to wrap those predictions around some benchmarks and some realistic scenarios in terms of what's possible with what you're doing. So when we look at the hiring pyramid on the left, you can see sort of a hiring funnel from a telemetry client that we've taken from a telemetry client. And at the bottom of the pyramid, you have almost 1 million views on their career site, right? And then the next step up, you've got 111,000 application starts. You've got 26,000 applicants coming out of those application starts. So 26,000 people who started the application out of the 111,000 actually completed it, and they actually converted 617 to hires, right? So if we look at the conversion rates for that, sort of the most important one is the sort of bottom of the pyramid to the third level up, which is visitor to applicant rate. And here we have a 2.7% conversion rate from visitors to applicants. And then if we go a bit farther, we have a 2.4% conversion rate from applicant to hire. Right, so these are good numbers to know because this is what you're building off of as you're increasing your capability around candidate experience. And if we look at the right, we see that same pyramid, but we've changed the conversion rate by 1 percentage point, 1 incremental percentage point, right? And as you can see now, those same 964,000 views turn into 36,000 applicants, or an additional 10,000 applicants, by improving that conversion rate through all the capabilities that we are proposing to adopt here within our recruitment marketing capabilities. And those 36,000 applicants, all things being equal, if you hold the same applicant to hire ratio, turns into 861 hires. So that's an additional almost 250 hires. And this forms the basis for your calculations in terms of what your ROI can be with increased candidate experience capabilities, right? So don't be put off by this big, large number. Again, you're going to get a handbook. But this is sort of a full sort of example of how to run a candidate experience ROI calculation. So let's assume that we don't improve it by the 30% or whatever was in the previous slide. We'll just do a very modest 10% increase in conversion rate. Now we're going to map that back to our capabilities. What are we doing? Did we not have mobile optimized applications, and now we're moving to mobile optimized applications? Maybe that 10% might increase to 20%. If we just have a bland ATS generated single page career site, and now we've added mobile optimization, we've added targeted career sites. We've become more sophisticated. We've increased the search capability. Well, maybe we're going to do even more than that. Maybe we could have a 30-40% increase in conversion rate. That's for you to sort of to justify. But as we look at this, let's say your current recruiting budget is 1.2 million, and that recruiting budget today gives you 120,000 visitors per year, right? So at your current conversion rate of 2%, you're going to get about 2,400 applicants on an annual basis, right? So we calculate that by dividing your recruiting budget by the number of visitors per year, or excuse me, we do that by the number of applicants you get, dividing that by the number of visitors you get per year, and that gives us the 2% conversion rate. Now, you calculate your current cost per candidate is about $500. It's a little less than $500, but I rounded it up. And again, you do that by dividing your number of applicants by your overall recruiting budget, right? So let's call it $500. Now you're projecting a 10% increase on that conversion rate. So your 2% conversion becomes 2.2%, right? So you take your conversion rate and you multiply it by 1.1, and that gives you the 10% increase. So now the number of applicants or talent network members you're going to get out of that traffic has increased to 2,640, right? So you've added an additional 240 applicants based on the improvements that you've made. And if you take those additional applicants and you multiply them by your $500 cost per candidate, right? Because you've already calculated that, that's a pretty steady number. Your ROI for this particular scenario would be an additional $120,000 in value. So whatever efforts you go through to increase your capabilities, to increase your conversion rates, adds up in this example scenario as $120,000. All right, so that's sort of a broad overview of how you go about calculating ROI for specific candidate experience improvements. Now, let's talk a little bit about CRM. CRM is a little bit more broad and far-reaching because CRM is sort of a foundational technology for recruitment marketing, right? So the value of CRM really comes in taking all your disparate sources of candidates, that's past applicants that might be sitting in your ATS that are difficult to search and your recruiters don't go there, to maybe people who have attended events that maybe are sitting in a spreadsheet or spreadsheets somewhere within the department, to candidates that are and resumes that are sitting in recruiters' inboxes, consolidating them all into a centralized CRM system, which forms your talent pool that now you can make available for easy searching and sourcing to all of your organization, your recruiting organization, your recruiters. You can segment that talent pool. You can run searches and find who your most qualified candidates are for key job families and pipeline them against those job families. You can share that talent pool amongst all your recruiters, and you can engage those candidates based on who they are and what jobs they're most appropriate for, right? So that's where you're getting the value of this. So the number of places you can look for ROI are a lot larger within CRM and consolidated talent pools. So the first place you can look is in reduced cost per candidate, right? So now that you've centralized all your talent, you know what it is, it's easy to get to, you can organize it and segment it. You're now in a position where you can pay once for each candidate and then you own the data, right? So anytime a recruiter in Chicago downloads someone from a resume database, it goes into your talent pool, and nobody else in another organization or another location is going to download that candidate again. You don't have to. You don't have to pay for that candidate again. You own it, and you own it forever. The second area is you're spending less money on ads and agencies and database searches because you've centralized all your candidates. And as you bring people in through ads and agencies and database searches, you have less need to go back out and get more, right? You're maximizing everything you're getting out of those candidates, and you're constantly marketing to them. Again, bringing in talent networks into that centralized database just broadens the pool from hard applicants and active candidates to more passive candidates. Again, so that's more candidates for the same amount of money. And even some CRMs like telemetry sort of have artificially intelligent bots that will go out and search resume databases and search your talent pool and constantly surface qualified candidates for pipelines, for open jobs, consistently. So again, that's building that talent pool. The bigger it gets, the more value you can get out of it, right? And you'll see your cost per candidate go down, right? And there's the calculation that Stephen talked about. The other area to look for within terms of CRM is speeding time to fill, as we talked about before. Because you're filling talent pipelines ahead of need, and because you're centralizing this great source of ready candidates as job requisitions come open, you're able to quickly and easily source from that database and get candidates today that you can begin the recruiting process with. So the way to calculate increased value from that time to fill, that improved time to fill, if we look at the time to fill example, let's say you have 35 days to fill, it's your current time to fill metric, and you hire 50 people annually, right? And as we learned from Brandon Hall, you can expect a 39% increase in efficiency if you can get to that top half of that capability model, right? So let's just use that. We're going to get 39% more efficient by instituting this CRM-based recruitment marketing strategy and technology. Here's where revenue per employee comes in, right? So now you need to put a value on that increased productivity, because now rather than 35 days to fill per each candidate, you shrunk that by 39%. So that means people are in seats, productive faster. So those extra days that they are productive, you need to have some sort of metric to assign value to that. So we'll use $200,000, which I've gone and talked to someone in finance. They say, yeah, that's our revenue per employee. So then you divide that by 261 work days in a year, and you're able to assign an overall value by day on those recouped days of productivity that your time to fill has gained you. And in this example, that's $523,000 for this particular example. Again, this is not a hard cost savings. This is a productivity gain or an opportunity. And it's a way to assign value to those recouped days of productivity. Other areas to look for CRM and engagement: increased quality of hire. Again, Brandon Hall showed us that there is a significant increase in quality of hire for organizations that are higher in recruitment marketing capability. And it makes sense, right? You've got a talent pool that you're curating. You're looking for talent that meets your needs, and the talent that gets into your talent pool that is not aligned with your strategic job families or key hiring needs really gets disregarded, because again, you're able to search and pipeline the best talent into pipelines and open jobs through that capability. So your recruiters are going to naturally be working with higher quality candidates as they're sourcing than they would if they did a broad sourcing on LinkedIn or Indeed resume database. So that's likely to show up as greater quality of hire. And as you analyze your best sources of hire within your CRM, you can take a step back and look at, well, where did we find those? If we're finding that we're getting a lot of great technologists through GitHub, well, then we're going to source more. We're going to source more from GitHub and get more of those candidates in. So it's a self-refining talent pool. You're sort of modeling your ideal workforce pre-hire. So let's just use an assumption of 25% more quality hires. All right, so if we run the calculations here, let's say you have, and we're just going to do it purely by, just to make things simple, how many people did we retain in the first year, right? So what percentage? So if we do that calculation, we look and we'll say that our turnover rate is 30% in the first year for new hires, and we hire 50 new hires per year. We're going to reduce that by 25%, so we multiply that by the 25% reduction in turnover, and if then we multiply that by the cost per hire, so we can assign a value to it. Now I'm assigning a $4,000 cost per hire. It's sort of one that was developed by Burson and Associates as a broad industry average for cost per hire, and it was sort of validated by SHRM as well. They both got similar numbers. So $4,000 in cost per hire, it's a very conservative number. It really doesn't take into account lost productivity, et cetera, from turnover. But in this example, we've got $15,000 in increased value from increasing our quality of hire. right? And so if you're hiring 500 total hires a year, that becomes 150,000. It's really a matter of scale in terms of what you end up with when you run these calculations. Next, we have reduction in candidate duplicates. Now that we've centralized all our candidates into one place, as I said before, it means we don't have to pay for candidates twice. So when an agency submits a candidate, or you pull down a candidate from a resume database search, CRM tells you we already have that candidate. You don't have to buy it again. Don't have to pay for it, right? So that's going to be some level of reduction in cost for you. So you got to make an assumption, and I suggest being conservative with your assumptions. So in this case, I'm going to say we're going to reduce our duplicates by 2%. Now, if you've done some research and you see that you have a ton of duplicates and you're pretty much in the business of accepting duplicate candidates, you can make that much higher. But in this case, 2%, you would take the total number of candidates that you have, you would multiply it by whatever your cost per candidate is, and then you would multiply it by that 2%, which would mean this is the dollar value of that incremental 2% of candidates that we're not paying for anymore, and that becomes your ROI for reduced duplicates. Another area we talked about is increasing candidates from talent networks. So you're engaging more passive candidates and you're using them for future sourcing. So we're going to say by offering that ability for passive candidates to opt into a talent network, you're going to get 10% more of those career site visitors who are looking at your jobs are going to actually take that opportunity to let you know about them. As we calculate that additional candidates, you can take your cost per candidate, multiply it by 10% more total applicants. So you would take your existing applicants and multiply it by 10%. And if we had a $50 cost per candidate and we increased our candidates to 2,000 with a 10% increase, that would work out to $100,000 in additional value from additional candidates in our talent networks. Right? So we're just taking these specific capabilities and mapping them back to some core metrics that we have to create some scenarios. And just a quick word that I want to say. These percentages and these guesses that you're doing, be conservative with them and also don't hang on to them, right? So you're going to talk to people about your ROI and get input, and they're going to say 10%. No, it's going to be something more like 50%. Or they'll say 10%, you're crazy. Be 5%. Here's what you do. You just go, what do you want it to be? 5%? We'll put 5% in there. Because I guarantee you that the work that you've done in really tying value back to specific capabilities and then being flexible about what percentages you assign in terms of efficiency, you're going to get a lot of buy-in to the numbers, right? So you're talking strategy, you're talking capability, and you're talking hard ROI in terms of value brought back. And that helps to build consensus around your strategic vision that you're trying to achieve. So the other area, and I'm speeding up because I know I'm taking a long time here, is reduce staff costs. So when you centralize all your candidates, and it's less of a Wild West situation where every recruiter's got their own sort of stable of candidates that they're working with, and you make it easy for recruiters to then share those candidates, source from that database, they're going to spend less time searching, they're going to spend less time sourcing, they're going to have more access to more candidates, and they're not going to need to advertise as much. Your organization is not going to need to spend money advertising as much. So your staff is going to have more time to do what they do. So let's project a 5% increase in staff efficiency. The way you would calculate that is take your hourly rate, let's call it $35, multiply it by the number of recruiters that you have, right? That gives you your total cost of recruiters that are recruiting day in and day out. Multiply that by 2,087, that's the work hours in a year, and then multiply that by 5%. That's the efficiency increase. So in this particular example, reduced staff time would add $14,609 in additional value for. So I rushed through that because we don't have a lot of time. But Stephen, why don't you jump in and talk a little bit about advertising ROI?
Sure, absolutely. So you're pushing me from left brain to no brainer, into the advertising realm, and it's interesting in this area. So many of the clients that we're working with are advertising out to fewer and fewer distribution points or sources, right? And it's because there's a general sense out there that there's a lot of difference between one source and another in terms of the value. So if you have in your organization automated job distribution, you're going to be able to increase your return on investment because of a number of reasons. Number one, it's going to lower your cost per applicant and your cost per hire. It's going to eliminate pushing out to ads that just don't perform or sources that don't perform, right? It's going to automatically make sure that you push out to free ad sources, like let's say, Indeed, for instance, and other, new entrants into the automated free realm. It's going to help you manage your recruiter ad placement in terms of the time that it takes to actually post a job. So you got that reduced staff dollars, very similar to some of the efficiency ROIs that Ian just spoke about in the CRM tool. So we've got clients for whom, their recruiters don't touch a single job, and they just automatically go out into the channels and sources by business rules. It saves all of the time from those recruiters. And of course, if you can get jobs out immediately, so automated job posting will do that. It's going to reduce your time to fill because you're out to the market earlier. So these are different ways that job distribution increases your ROI. So reduced cost per applicant. Basically, if you don't have any systems at all, and either your recruiters are pushing jobs out, or you got some mishmash of vendors that are scraping various sites. Once you put in a proper system, you can pretty much plan a 20 to 30% reduction in your cost per applicant. Because of some of the reasons I spoke of on the earlier slide. Now, if you do have a system, but it's not automated, right? It's electronic but not automated, and you move to a more automated distribution with analytics, you're going to likely see a 5 to 15% reduction in your cost per applicant, right? So job distribution is still a real value for the organization. So some of the ROI advertising you're going to get in terms of, let's just say, for instance, reducing your recruiter time, right? So let's say, for instance, we have clients who auto post 80 to 95% of all of their jobs without any recruiter intervention at all. Now, you could assume that that's going to give you back 33% of a recruiter's posting time, right? So whatever, and I've sat with clients before to say, okay, walk me through how you post a job. How much time is it actually taking you to post that job? And then you just basically, take the following. You take their average hourly rate, you multiply that by the time they're taking to post a job, and you multiply that by the number of jobs they're posting, and that's your cost. So if you can see a reduction in that, you want to add into that, multiplying by that reduction. So if a recruiter's making an average of $65 an hour, 33% reduction in the time they spend posting a job basically saves $5,300 per hour, right, per year for that specific recruiter, right? So it's going to help you just kind of validate that team efficiency. Again, it's going to help reduce time to fill if you can get jobs automatically posted out into the proper channels and sources with the proper business rules, making sure that you understand, where your candidates are coming to see jobs, right? All of that's automated. You're not just guessing it. Then you can maybe make an assumption that you could reduce your time to fill by, let's say, 3 days. So what does that look like from an ROI perspective, right? So you take your current posting time in days. How long does it take to post a job? You multiply that out by the numbers of jobs you've got posted out there. Take that revenue per employee, right? And then divide that by the number of work days in a year, okay? And there's your time to fill. So let's say you've got a 3-day lag time times 250 jobs. You're reducing by 3 days, right? Times 250 jobs. You've got a 204,000 revenue per employee, and you divide that by the number of days. You've got a real ROI. Again, not cut cost, but increased productivity of $586,000, right? So again, like Ian said, you take these numbers and you use the ones that make most sense for your organization. So measuring ROI, ongoing measurement and refinement, in terms of job advertising, what are your channels? Can you analyze broader channels in terms of which ones are doing more for you? There's a lot of talk about social networks, but do you actually get a lot of people who become applicants through social networks? Job boards, which ones are producing, which ones, which channels are producing, job board channels, outbound sourcing. How about pay-per-click ads, right? We've had clients that, we're putting banner ads up to the tune of $1.5 million a year, getting 1 or 2 hires, right? So that certainly creates an ROI challenge there, doesn't it? And then you want to track sources, right? So within those channels, what are the specific sources that are delivering candidates and applicants for you? Let's say LinkedIn versus Facebook, for instance, or Indeed versus Monster, right? And then specific programs. What types of programs are you running within the organization? Can you track that by campaigns, for instance, right? Events, what kind of return are you having on an event or an email campaign, right? These are all different areas that you want to be able to measure your ROI. And how about your recruiters, right? Are you able to really analyze top recruiters? What are they doing? What are their tactics? And can you then leverage what they're doing across your organization? So can you run, can you run analytics on a specific recruiter or a team of recruiters, right? Who might have the best analytics, and then say, okay, which activities, for instance, right? Which channels, for instance, right? What are they doing? Can you measure that within your CRM and your ATS tool so that you can then push that through the organization and drive more benefits across the organization in general? Which activities are producing more applicants, right? Is it emailing people, right? Is it phone calling, right? What types of activities do people take inside the system that generate more response and greater greater applicant flow?
And again, this is the ongoing measurement. This is where you prove the assumptions you made, and a good recruitment marketing system will give you these metrics. And oftentimes you're just taking these increased capabilities one at a time. Like you're digesting, maybe you're implementing some candidate experience stuff. These metrics will help prove your ROI or disprove your ROI, but ultimately make it easier for you to justify increasing that investment in time or systems to increase your capability even further. So it's really important for this ongoing measurement and refinement. So that's the presentation. I know it was a lot of numbers, and again, you will be getting the ROI handbook. So all of this will be contained and much more. If you want to learn about Telemetry's recruitment marketing solutions, you can visit us at telemetry.com, or you can reach out to Stephen, and he can answer questions and point you in the right direction. I'll check and see if we have any questions here. Let me see. Nope. No questions at this point. So, Stephen, thank you for joining me today. Thanks everybody out there. Want to thank you. Look for your recruitment marketing handbook and your slides and a recorded version of the webinar here within the next 24 hours. And we hope that you make it a great day. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Ian. It's been great.